Greeting YouTube. Today I'll be talking about an autobiography of Rob Lowe's called "Stories I Only Tell My Friends," an autobiography. He is 6 months older than I am, and this picture in this on this cover is from 5 years ago, and he is annoyingly good looking. It really is disappointing. When I bought the book, I discovered this was on the inside of the book. And this is actually one of the sticky things. I think it was supposed to have been stuck in the book, but he signed it, shoved it in the book, and someone else was probably supposed to stick it in there, and they didn't. So I have Rob Lowe's autograph. I may keep this. It made me smile. And this actually is an autograph. It's not just a stamp. Um, I have a fascination for people's stories about themselves. My channel is a story about myself in bits and pieces, along with endless spewings of my opinion. Um, so I love a good autobiography. I also enjoy a good biography. I tend to shy away from biographies of people who are alive. If someone's alive, they should be able to tell their own story. If someone's dead, okay, then you can have somebody else step in and tell their story for them. So I read this, which is Rob Lowe's autobiography. And one of the things I enjoyed about this is that I don't think it was ghostwritten at all, um, because you can really hear the voice of Rob Lowe. If you've listened to him act, particularly in television roles and things like that, this sounds like him, which is refreshing. I don't like when I'm reading an autobiography and it feels very sterile. Um, I enjoy a book that sounds like the person that wrote the book. So, as I said, he's 6 months older than I am, almost exactly. And he was raised into a chaotic household, something I can appreciate and respect. Um, and his mother, over the course of her life, was married and divorced 3 times. my mother has been married and divorced 3 times. I'm not a world famous actor and entrepreneur, however, but this story of Rob Lowe is fascinating for how it parallels the experience of being a kid in the era I was a kid. Even though I was more stationary, I was, for the most part, my memories are of being raised here in New Hampshire. Our experience was very similar in many ways, and that reflection and see how and the differences between his life and my life were both interesting and enlightening to me because we did have similarities. He became an alcoholic because of his inability to deal with the stressors of his childhood inadequacies that his parents gave him due to poor parenting. He had abandonment issues, and I respect that, understand that very deeply and personally. Thankfully, I didn't become an alcoholic, but he did because that was a coping mechanism. It was a form of self medication. I understand the mechanism behind it. I'm glad I avoided it. Um, but he also has a wonderful series of events in his life where he encountered famous situations and famous people because his family kind of rubbed shoulders with the right folks in LA. He was raised for the most part um, as an adolescent in LA. I mean, he was friends with the Sheens and shoot now I'm blanking on the other famous actor family he was friends with. But I mean, Martin Sheen became a father figure to him as he was growing up, and eventually, of course, they co-starred together in the television series West Wing. Um, but his acting was something that he expressed himself in, and it was a place where he could have a sense of mastery, a sense of accomplishment, where the rest of his life was so chaotic. And it very much made him the classic theater geek. So he always felt on the outside. He wasn't accepted. Even in LA, which was weird, you'd think that LA would have been more accepting of that theater geek vibe because so much of LA is just completely and utterly absorbed in the entertainment industry. I mean, we have Los Angeles with the big words Hollywood stamped on a hillside. You know what I mean? But the kids didn't, and he was ostracized for his love of acting. He also did a little singing, a little dancing. He was fairly well rounded when it came to doing entertainment things, which served him well. So he had to disappoint Ron Howard by telling him, "Mr. Howard, I actually don't know how to ride a motorcycle." So they had to fake it when he was a teenager. Um, I think it was one of the Ron Howard's first directing endeavors. I believe he was still on Happy Days at the point in his career. Um, but he met Jim Belushi near the end. He met uh, the people doing the special effects for Star Wars. He got to walk around the Star Wars Death Star set. He got to touch the Millennium Falcon model before anybody knew what Star Wars was. Because his mom's second or third husband had like a sibling that was in the entertainment industry and they were doing special effects for Star Wars. That's just really cool. He also had some weird encounters, like taking a plane on October 30th, 2001, which was the dry run flight for the terrorists, Flight 77. And 11 days later, they took Flight 77 into the Pentagon. That's weird. Just he knew the crew. He'd chat with them because he took this flight all the time. And then to find out the people that you knew and you were acquainted with are just gone. He found the love of his life, and he was able to work it out by being healthy and being sober and communicating and telling the person he loved everything he could, being honest with her. I can understand that too. So while they're not parallels in my life the way that maybe it might have been slightly more interesting, I wouldn't mind being a multi-millionaire, quite frankly. I would probably still have a cluttered office. But the story comes through as Mr. Lowe. And it's fun to read the inside scoop on all the films he touched. And there's enough, as someone in the back said, there's enough dish in this, a little name dropping, that it's always entertaining. He talks about his rough years where he would potentially use MTV as the home shopping network. See an attractive woman, call up the right people, and just get a date because he's Rob Lowe. And he could. And it was very unlikely that a woman was going to say no to a date with Rob Lowe. And that's kind of the fantasy that every geeky kid in high school has, that every guy has, isn't it? The ability to have any woman you want, to be the party animal. But that's kind of hollow. And he eventually discovers that and takes off on a better, healthier path. So there's a sense of redemption in this book as well. I'm sorry, I'm blathering. The reality is, it was entertaining. I had fun. It was a good read. It pulled me in and it made me not want to not stop reading it, and I can't think of a better definition of a decent book. So if you like Rob Lowe and you have an affection for annoyingly handsome people, go ahead and give a read to Stories I Only Tell My Friends. It's well worth your time, and maybe you'll get an autograph.